Bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue à Coffee Break French. Moi c'est Marc.
Et moi, c'est Hélène.
Comment vas-tu Hélène?
Ça va super et toi?
Très bien. C'est la première fois pour toi pour
Oui.
faire un live comme ça en direct?
Exactement, c'est ma première fois.
Excellent, bah, t'es la bienvenue.
Merci.
We are here today to talk about a particular aspect of French grammar, but also to talk about our new masterclass course, which begins tomorrow. And we'll be telling you a little more about that later. We are broadcasting on YouTube and on Facebook, so wherever you're watching from, let us know where you're watching from, because it's always great to have some hellos and some greetings from all over the world from our Coffee Break community. So do let us know where you're watching from, and at any point, if you have any questions, then you can also ask us the questions in the chat.
Exactement.
And we'll do our best to answer. So to begin with, we are also going to be doing a little bit of interaction with you. So if you are ready for some interaction, we'll be inviting you to post some things in the comments, letting us know how much you're understanding, if you're following everything, and if everything makes sense. Alors, je pense que c'est le moment pour commencer.
C'est parti.
Ok, donc on va parler des pronoms.
Les pronoms... Mais quels pronoms?
Les pronoms directs. Enfin, direct, indirect.
Indirect.
Oh, mais qu'est-ce que je dis? Yes, I could tell with the... You're like, no, not that, Mark. It's been a long afternoon. This is live number 3. We've done...
C'est pas ce que j'avais préparé.
We've done Spanish, we've done Italian, and now it's time for French. So, yes, it's indirect object pronouns. How do we refer to these in French? Complément...
Les pronoms compléments d'objets directs ou indirects pour ceci.
Okay. I think you sometimes say like COI and COD.
Yeah,
COD.
exactly.
Ouais.
COI, COD.
COI, COD. But what is a pronoun? We use the word pronoun to refer to anything that is standing for the noun. The pro part there refers to standing for the noun. And we're going to start in English today and focus on how these are used in English, and then we'll move on to see how that works in French.
Exactement.
Make sense? Yeah?
Parfait.
So we've got lots of different types of pronoun. We've got subject pronouns, direct object pronouns, indirect object pronouns, reflexive pronouns, possessive pronouns, disjunctive pronouns. But today we are focusing on indirect, not direct, object pronouns. And we'll see exactly what these are, because they represent some of those little words that can be quite often tricky for a learner, because sometimes they look quite similar and you're not quite sure how to use them. Let's begin in English, however. And as I said, we're going to look at some examples and then see how this works in English, and then translate that, or translate the concept, into French. So to begin with, Laura reads the letter to David. So we've got 3 things here. We've got Laura.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've got the letter.
Yeah.
And then we've got David. 3 different people, in a sense, or 3 different elements to that. 3 things that we could replace with a pronoun. If we replace Laura with a pronoun, then we would probably use she.
Yeah.
Okay? So that would become she reads the letter to David if we wanted to replace Laura. Let's say we'd already been talking about Laura, and we were going to say that, Laura came yesterday, she's going to be, she's going to be doing the interview tomorrow, but in the meantime, she is reading the letter to David.
Yeah.
So we've already talked about Laura, we don't need to mention Laura again.
Yeah, so we don't have to repeat her name several times.
Exactly. So she reads the letter to David. We use the pronoun she to refer to Laura. Let's come back to our main sentence. Laura reads the letter to David. We could also think about replacing the letter, because the letter arrived this morning. Laura reads the letter to David. We don't want to hear the letter again. So what do we hear?
She reads it.
She reads it. So we replace the letter with it. She reads it, or Laura reads it to David. Obviously, we could say she as well here, but we'll replace them one by one. Let's now think about to David, because that in itself is another element of this sentence. And we could replace to David with to him. Okay, so we're combining the preposition to with the pronoun him. So far, so good. Laura reads the letter to him. Again, David just arrived. Laura is reading the letter to him. Ça va?
Parfait.
Ça marche. Okay. So we've got 3 different things here. She is the subject pronoun. it is the direct object pronoun. It's the direct object of the sentence. And to him is the indirect object pronoun.
That's what's interesting for us today.
Absolutely. Because it's that to him that we're going to be actually looking at in this lesson. I have a question. We're going to be asking you this number of times during the session here. Does all this make sense so far? Are you confused? If so, put 1 in the chat. If some of it makes sense, put 2 in the chat. And if it's all good so far, put 3 in the chat. And we'll monitor the chat to make sure that it's all making sense and that you are understanding what we're doing. In the meantime, I'm also going to say bonjour to Sparkling Fay from Austria. And Lou Vanzel is joining us from South Africa in Cape Town.
Super.
Fantastic, yeah. So let us know where you're watching from, because it's always great to be able to say hello. So we're getting some 3s in the chat. That is good to know. Let's continue then. We're going to move to French, which makes sense because this is, after all, a French session. We've got Laura reads the letter to David, which would be, Hélène?
Laura lit la lettre à David.
Parfait. Laura lit la lettre à David. Our 3 elements, Laura, la lettre, and à David. And we're going to replace these one by one. To begin with, let's take the à David part out. And we're going to replace that with an indirect object pronoun. And that indirect object pronoun is?
Lui.
Lui. So, lui. It's one of these words that you've probably seen, and sometimes it's a little difficult to know exactly what it refers to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, it means, in this case, to him. Heads up, it can also mean to her.
Yeah.
So, worth keeping that in mind. But something different happens in French, because we're not going to say Laura lit la lettre lui. Ça marche pas. What happens?
On change l'ordre des mots. We change the word order.
Exactement. Donc, on dit?
Laura lui lit la lettre.
Quite a tongue twister there.
Yeah, a bit.
Laura lui lit la lettre. In fact, you know what? I think we should all say that together, okay? If you're watching, even if you're in a crowded bus at the moment, I want you to read this aloud. After Hélène, vas-y.
Laura lui lit la lettre.
Laura lui lit la lettre. Je viens de me rendre compte que je n'ai pas la bonne tasse.
Moi, j'ai la bonne.
Ah, okay. So,
oh, elle n'est pas dans le bon sens.
So, yeah, I brought the Coffee Break Portuguese mug, but Hélène's got the right one. We do have Coffee Break Portuguese if you'd like to learn Coffee Break Portuguese, you know. Just head to coffeebreaklanguages.com/Portuguese. But yes, I apologise for that. But nonetheless. Anyway, Laura lui lit la lettre. Laura, to him, reads the letter. Okay. Now, we can also do this with other tenses. So, let's hear this example.
J'ai raconté une histoire à Louise.
Okay, so j'ai raconté une histoire à Louise. I told a story to Louise. Or, in English, we could say, I told Louise a story. Mm-hmm. But we have to work around that in French because we need to think about how we're using the kind of grammatical functions here. Yeah. So if we were wanting to replace à Louise, we can also use that same word, lui, because lui means to him or to her. So we're going to again replace à Louise with lui, but this time we're working in the perfect tense. So something a little different happens. We have?
Je lui ai raconté une histoire.
So one more time, nice and slowly, so that we can hear all of these.
Je lui ai raconté une histoire.
Parfait, parfait. Je lui ai raconté une histoire. So literally what we're saying is, I, to her, have told a story. So the to her part is coming between our subject pronoun, je, and in this case, our auxiliary verb, avoir. So, et being the auxiliary verb for j'ai raconté, I have told or I told. So, I told her a story. In French, we need to say, I to her have told a story.
Yeah.
Okay? Your turn. Okay? So, we're going to give you some time here. Je donne le livre à Jean-Luc. What we'd like you to do is to translate, well, to to swap this around and take out à Jean-Luc. We want to get rid of Jean-Luc from the sentence. Let's imagine we'd been talking about Jean-Luc for hours, and you're now going to say, I give him the book, or I give to him the book. Over to you. We'll give you 10 seconds to think about this, and we'll keep an eye on the chat. Kim's watching from very rainy northern somewhere. We don't know where it is, Kim. You'll need to tell us. It could be northern Sweden. It could be northern Scotland. It could be northern France. Who knows? Aussie Juzz is watching from the southwest of France. I wonder if it's very rainy in the southwest of France.
I would have expected Australia with an Aussie.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. So we're getting some answers here. We've got Sparkling Fay saying Je lui donne le livre. Yves is saying Je lui donne le livre. Joe is taking it a stage further and saying Je le lui donne. Impressionnant, huh? We'll come back to that. Oh, Kim is in Ireland, Northern Ireland. Thanks for that, Kim. Good to know.
Makes sense.
Okay, so yeah, it seems to be making sense. We've got Je donne le livre à Jean-Luc, which becomes Je lui donne le livre. Now, let's try something else here.
J'ai dit la vérité à mes parents.
Yeah. So here, à mes parents is not to him or to her. Mm-hmm. It's a different person here. And it's actually a plural person. So here, we're not going to say I to him said the truth, but I to them said the truth. And this is different. We're going to replace à mes parents with the word leur. Can you give us the full sentence, Hélène?
Je leur ai dit la vérité.
Je leur ai dit la vérité. So I, to them, have told the truth. I have said the truth, literally. So when it's to them, it's leur. And when it's to him or to her or to it, it would be lui. Okay?
Exactement.
Très bien. Question again. Are you confused? If so, put a 1 in the chat. If some bits of this are making sense, then put 2. And if it's all making sense, then put a 3 in the chat. And again, we'll keep an eye on this. Well done to all of you who tried that little test there. Lots of you actually are responding. That's fantastic. Well done. So 1, 2, or 3, depending on how things are going so far. What we're going to go on to do now is a little bit of listening, because Hélène has prepared a nice little text that we are going to hear, and we're going to hear lots of indirect object pronouns in this text.
Je crois bien. I think so.
Imagine that. What a coincidence. Quelle coïncidence that there are lots of indirect object pronouns. So the first time we're going to listen to it, you're not going to see any of the words on screen. You need to really focus on what Hélène is saying. Second time round, we will read it with the words on screen. And then third time round, we'll go through the whole text together and talk about all the language in the text. That makes sense? Parfait.
And find the indirect object pronouns.
Absolutely, yeah. Listen out for these lui and leur, and there might even be...
I think there's a few more.
Okay, just to keep you on your toes. Okay, so Hélène, do you want to take it away with the text?
Parfait, c'est parti. Quand j'ai décidé de venir vivre en Écosse, mes parents étaient très inquiets. Mais je leur ai promis que je rentrerai souvent pour les vacances. En plus, je n'ai pas déménagé seule. J'avais 2 amis de la fac avec moi. Depuis la France, nous ne pouvions pas faire de visite, alors notre amie Lucie nous a donné un coup de main car elle vivait déjà en Écosse. L'agent immobilier lui a fait visiter l'appartement et elle nous a envoyé des vidéos. Maintenant, je suis bien installée et je suis toujours aussi proche de ma mère. Donc, elle me passe un coup de fil tous les 2 jours. Je lui raconte ce que je fais et elle me donne des nouvelles de la famille. Hier, elle m'a dit que ma cousine est enceinte. Je lui rendrai sûrement visite lors de mon prochain voyage en France.
Très, très bien. OK, merci beaucoup. So, you hopefully picked up some of these indirect object pronouns in there. We definitely heard some lui and leur, but we're also going to see as we go through this, there are some other indirect object pronouns in there too. Lui and leur are, in a sense, the tricky ones because they form they're different words.
Yeah.
But we also will hear some me and maybe a nous in there too. And you'll recognize me and nous as other pronouns. But we'll not go into that just now. Let's look at the same text, but this time with our text. So we're going to go through it. You'll be able to follow on the screen as Hélène reads.
Quand j'ai décidé de venir vivre en Écosse, mes parents étaient très inquiets, mais je leur ai promis que je rentrerai souvent pour les vacances. En plus, je n'ai pas déménagé seule. J'avais 2 amis de la fac avec moi. Depuis la France, nous ne pouvions pas faire de visite. Alors, notre amie Lucie nous a donné un coup de main car elle vivait déjà en Écosse. L'agent immobilier lui a fait visiter l'appartement et elle nous a envoyé des vidéos. Maintenant, je suis bien installée et je suis toujours très proche de ma mère, donc elle me passe un coup de fil tous les 2 jours. Je lui raconte ce que je fais et elle me donne des nouvelles de la famille. Hier, elle m'a dit que ma cousine est enceinte. Je lui rendrai sûrement visite lors de mon prochain voyage en France.
Super, et félicitations à ta cousine, justement. Okay, so we are now going to go through the text together. And what we've done is highlighted all of these indirect object pronouns as we see them going through the text. We'll go through each line, talk about it, and of course, if you've got any questions at all, don't hesitate to post them in the chat. We'll deal with them as we come to them. So, to begin with, quand j'ai décidé de venir vivre en Écosse, when I decided to come and live in Scotland, mes parents étaient très inquiets. So my parents were very worried. Right? C'est la vérité?
Oui, c'est vrai.
Yeah, because we're all so horrible in Scotland, we're all so scary. Mais je leur ai promis que je rentrais souvent pour les vacances. So, I, to them, have promised que je rentrerai, tricky one to say, but I promised them that I would return, souvent, often, pour les vacances. So we've got an indirect object pronoun there.
Exactement.
The leur. Yeah, because you're saying to them.
them.
You could have said, mais j'ai promis à mes parents. But again, it's that avoiding the repetition. We've already talked about mes parents, but we don't want to repeat that. So, je leur ai promis. I promised them. En plus, je n'ai pas déménagé seul. J'avais 2 amis de la fac avec moi. So, what's more, I didn't move on my own. I had 2 friends from uni with me. Depuis la France, nous ne pouvions pas faire de visite. So from France, we weren't able to visit like housing appointments. Yes. What do you call that when you go to see a flat or you go to see a...
Yeah, we just say faire des visites.
Faire des visites.
Faire des visites d'appartements, de maisons.
Okay.
If you want to be more specific.
Très bien. Okay, so we couldn't do these, we couldn't do house visitations. There is a word in English, but it completely escapes me just now. We couldn't do these visits from France, depuis la France. Alors, notre amie Lucie nous a donné un coup de main. So our friend gave us a helping hand, car elle vivait déjà en Écosse, because she already lived in Scotland. But that nous in there, what's going on here?
Well, it kind of means to us because she gave to us a helping hand. So it's indirect.
Absolutely. And when you give something to someone, donner is one of these verbs that takes an indirect object. So She gave to us. Elle nous a donné un coup de main. She gave us a helping hand because we couldn't do viewings, house viewings. Thank you,
Word
team.
came back.
L'agent immobilier lui a fait visiter l'appartement et elle nous a envoyé des vidéos. So, the estate agent, the real estate agent, lui a fait visiter l'appartement. So, had her visit the house. Et elle nous a envoyé des vidéos. And she sent us videos. So, faire quelque chose à quelqu'un. That's a little bit tricky, that one. So, l'agent immobilier, lui, a fait visiter. So, the estate agent.
Yeah. So it's kind of to have someone to do something.
Exactly, yeah. So, to have someone do something, it is an indirect construction again. Faire quelque chose à quelqu'un. Okay, so l'agent immobilier, lui, a fait visiter l'appartement et elle nous a envoyé des vidéos and she, to us, sent some videos. So, again, envoyer, another verb that takes an indirect object because you sent to someone. Okay, so far so good. Maintenant, je suis bien installé et je suis toujours très proche de ma mère. So now I am well set up, I've settled in. Et je suis toujours très proche de ma mère. I'm still very close to my mom. Donc, elle me passe un coup de fil tous les 2 jours. So, she literally, she calls me every 2 days. So, passer un coup de fil à quelqu'un, to give someone a ring.
Yeah, give a ring.
Yeah. Meaning she telephones. But again, it's an indirect construction, just like sending or calling or something like that. Je lui raconte ce que je fais. I tell her what I'm doing. Tell to her, raconter à quelqu'un. Et elle me donne des nouvelles de la famille. And she gives to me the news of the family. Hier, elle m'a dit, she told me, she said to me, que ma cousine est enceinte, that my cousin is expecting. Je lui rendrai sûrement visite. I will surely visit her. To visit someone is rendre visite à quelqu'un lors de mon prochain voyage en France, during my next trip to France.
Exactement.
Très, très bien. Okay, so hopefully, now that we've gone through this concept of indirect object pronouns, recognizing them in the context of this passage has helped you solidify your knowledge. And we've seen so far me, lui, nous, leur. There are 2 others that we could add in here, and that's the ones for you. So, to you in a singular form.
Te.
Te, and to you in a plural form.
Vous.
Vous. So again, words we recognize from, for example, reflexive pronouns. Je me lave, tu te laves, and so on. Okay. Très bien. Let's review what we've talked about. Indirect object pronouns. The purpose of indirect object pronouns is to replace the nouns in a sentence in order to avoid repetition. So we've got...
J'explique la situation à Clara. We can turn that into je lui explique la situation.
Parfait. We have lui, meaning to him, to her, to it, is the singular third person indirect object pronoun. And we've got leur, meaning to them, regardless of gender. One thing to mention, as an indirect object pronoun, leur never changes, okay? You may have seen a word, L-E-U-R-S. There is a word, L-E-U-R-S. It means something different, okay? It's a possessive thing.
Yes.
So don't get mixed up. When it's an indirect object pronoun, there's never an S on leur. It's a very common mistake. And I tell you that native French speakers will use it quite
Moi,
often.
oui, je le fais.
Okay. Now, in French, you often need to add the idea of to. So, I sent him a letter in English becomes I to him send a letter. We need to introduce that to because it is an indirect object pronoun. And finally, some verbs require that indirect object. So we've seen many examples of this, like envoyer, to send, dire, to say, expliquer, to explain, donner, to give, offrir, to give as a present, and so on. Ouais?
Yeah, because you're giving something to someone.
Très, très bien. Okay. So, our final question to you. Are you confused? Number one, does some of this make sense? Number two, or if everything is making sense so far, then number three in the chat, please. Let's have a look at the chat. We've got some other suggestions for viewings. We've got inspections. Some people use inspections. I guess it varies depending on where you are. And Evie has been drilling this in Spanish for the past 2 months. I hope that it's helped make sense of it in sorry, I'm completely distracted by one of the comments here. Hopefully it's made sense doing it in French now. Joe is suggesting that perhaps our friend in Northern Ireland had maybe got covered in rain, basically. Okay, lots of threes, so that is all good. What we're going to do now is go on and talk a little more about the masterclass in general. And as we do this, if you've got any questions, please post them in the chat. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Perhaps, Hélène, you can keep an eye on that while I explain the basics of the masterclass. Parfait. Okay, so let's think about the masterclass then and taking it further from here. The masterclass is a 6-month course made up of monthly modules, like what we've done today. This is one of the topics that's covered in one of our modules. And the sessions are short, regular sessions. So it's like Coffee Break Learning. We do short lessons that you can access where and when it suits you to continue your learning in whatever way works best for you. It's very much structured learning. So this is the idea that what you're doing, you're building on. What you do in lesson 1, you build on in lesson 2. It's not individual lessons that just sit on their own. This is a structure that we follow all the way through the course. And there's audio content, there's text content and video review as well. And of course, it's all coffee break learning. So we're very much focusing on this idea of everything being like a coffee break, where you go for a coffee with a friend who happens to be an expert language teacher. Coffee break learning means coffee break length, so 15 minutes, 20-minute lessons. It is coffee break style, fun, friendly, not turn to page 37 in the book and copy out that text, that kind of thing. That is not what we do. We help you learn by having conversations and by presenting interesting lessons. And of course, coffee break quality. We strive to make our content as high quality as possible, from the audio content, the video content, and all the text content that we put together to make sure that you can make the progress that you need to make. The masterclass curriculum is based around 6 monthly modules, as we've said. So the first of these focuses on tricky verbs. And these are verbs you may be familiar with. You might know, for example, savoir and connaître. Both mean to know, but they're used in different situations. Typically, savoir is to know a fact, connaître, to know a person or to be acquainted with someone. But sometimes it's difficult to know which one to use. For example, if you were saying, I know the words to that song, would you use savoir or connaître?
Ça dépend.
Ça dépend. So there are different tricky verbs that we cover in this module. Things like emmener and amener. What's the difference between emmener and amener? Both can mean to bring or to take, in a sense, when you're taking someone somewhere. But which one is which? When to use which? Tricky stuff. We then move on to a module on pronouns, from which this content on indirect object pronouns has come. But we also look at all the other pronouns that we mentioned earlier: direct object pronouns, reflexive pronouns, disjunctive pronouns, and so on. We then move on to a module on false friends. So this is more vocabulary based. It's not so much about grammar, if you like. It's about building the grammar that you've covered in modules 1 and 2, but within a different context. And that's the context of false friends, where you think you know what a word means, but in actual fact, you don't know what it means, because it means something completely different. It just looks like the word. I'm thinking of a word like actuellement. Actuellement would be, it looks like actually, but in fact it means
at the moment,
right now, these days, actuellement. So that is our false friends module on vocabulary. Then we move on to tense mastery, where we're covering a range of tenses, looking at the present, the perfect, the imperfect, the future and the conditional, and really mastering those tenses and being confident in using them and learning the irregular verbs associated with the modules. And of course, you're seeing all this in context. You're not just getting a grammar note and being told to learn that. You're seeing it in text like the one that Hélène has just shared, or indeed in dialogues, which are fun dialogues set in different situations. Module 5 is on the subjunctive. Now, the subjunctive very often conjures up this image of fear among learners, and it absolutely shouldn't. The subjunctive is pretty straightforward when you know what you're doing, and of course we'll help you know exactly what you're doing with the subjunctive. We'll learn some subjunctive triggers, we'll learn how to form the subjunctive, and deal with lots of ways in which you can move forward with French with more confidence and sound more authentic when you speak French. Talking of which, our 6th module is about sounding more French and being able to use French the way a native speaker would use it. So that is module 6, where we're learning to use French question forms that change depending on how colloquial or how formal you want to be. Other expressions and the filler words that you use when you're speaking in French or a native speaker would use. So probably the most popular module, I think, of the Masterclass, module 6 there. So far, so good. Let's talk about the schedule now of the Masterclass. The schedule is as follows. I think you can see this. So what we've got here is the month of October. The first module begins tomorrow. That's Tuesday, the 1st of October. So that's lesson 1 on Tuesday the 1st, lesson 2 on the 4th, lesson 3 on the 8th, an alternative lesson, like an activity, on the 11th, lesson 4 on the 15th, lesson 5 on the 18th. And then that's really where we stop, because at the end of lesson 5, that's all the learning content of the module, if you like. But over and above that learning content, there is additional review content. So we have a checklist and a video review which come towards the end of the module. The other thing that we wanted to talk about is the target audience. So the target audience of the Masterclass is very much in the B1, B2 level. So when we're talking about language learning, particularly we use the Common European Framework of Reference, which goes from A1 all the way through to C2. So A1 for beginners, A2 upper beginners, B1 lower intermediate, B2 upper intermediate, C1 advanced, and then C2 pretty much native. So we see the Masterclass very much in the B area, kind of between B1 and B2. Or alternatively, if you're used to thinking about things in terms of Coffee Break, then if you've already done Coffee Break level 2 and you're very confident with that, then you might consider the Masterclass at that stage. If you've done Coffee Break level 3 or are working through Coffee Break level 3, then that is also a perfect point at which to do the Masterclass. Okay, let's come back to our slides. So that's the schedule and the target audience we've dealt with. Let's look at pricing now. So the pricing of the Masterclass, all of the elements of the Masterclass, that's 5 lessons per month, the bonus activities, the module tests, email check-ins, we check in with you by email, letting you know that there are new episodes available, and guaranteed feedback, because in every episode, in every lesson, you get a homework activity, and what you answer on the homework activity, you post that on our Masterclass website, or our system, and you get guaranteed feedback from one of our tutors. It might be Hélène, it might be one of the rest of the team, and you will get feedback explaining where you went wrong, giving some suggestions, and also if you've got it right, you'll get feedback saying, well done, it was 100% correct. But the most important part of this is that that feedback is shared feedback, because you will receive your feedback, but you'll also see the feedback that all the other learners in the Masterclass will also receive. And then that way you can learn from their correct answers and their wrong answers. So you'll learn even more that way. At the end of it, you'll get a course certificate, of course. Now, the usual price for this Masterclass is $649. But we are reducing that to $499 for this week, if you would like to take advantage of joining our class of October 2024. There is also a monthly option, which is normally $129 per month for 6 months. But we reduced that to $99. So for $99 a month, you'll get access to this entire collection of fantastic materials to work through. So, do we have any questions? Let's come back to this view. Do we have any questions?
Pas encore.
Pas encore.
Pas encore.
Okay, if you do have any questions, then let us know, because this is an opportunity to ask anything about the masterclass that you might be wondering about. We have had some questions in by email and on social media before this, so we can give you some further information. One question that someone was asking is about the whole idea of doing just one module. Can you do one module of the masterclass? So doing one module of the masterclass is not possible. The masterclass is a 6-month course, therefore you need to follow it through the 6 months of the course. The purpose of that is to build up on what you've learned previously. So if you were just coming in module 4, we'll have referred to things that don't make sense because you wouldn't have followed through with module 1 to 4. So it's important that you do the whole masterclass. That way it makes much more sense. Hopefully that answers your question.
And you can always reuse what you've learned.
Absolutely. It's available there for you to come back and review. You're able to follow that through whenever it suits you. Sorry,
I've got a little question.
Okay.
What if I can't complete the masterclass? Will I still have access to the course after the 6 months?
Absolutely, yeah, great question, Bob. The idea is that, of course, it's a lifetime membership, a lifetime access to the content. So you can use the masterclass over the course of the next 6 months, but you will be able to access it from here on in. So you'll be able to revisit it and review the materials that you've learned and follow up with reviewing the content through the lesson notes, the bonus lesson notes, which are the reference guide, and then also all of the audio materials and the video materials. You'll have access to all of these. In fact, I was just speaking to one of our previous masterclass students last week, and she was saying how she loves the fact that she can just go back and use the reference notes to follow up on other things that she has learned. So there we go.
Okay. Angela also asking, what's the cost in pounds?
Okay, so the masterclass is available to buy on our site. In fact, perhaps we could have the link up so that if anyone's interested in following up, we can go to that site. So they're coffeebreakmasterclass.com. If you go there, click on French, and then you'll see all of the information on our page about the French masterclass, including some videos or some interviews with previous masterclass students. So it's available to purchase on the site in dollars. The approximate pounds price is obviously based on the current exchange rate, is about £372. So that obviously will change very slightly from day to day with the exchange rates, but that gives you an idea of the pounds price. Okay, and if you were paying monthly, thank you to the team who are providing all of this information in the background. If you're paying monthly, that would be £73.86 for your month. And if you think about that, I'm going to do a little calculation here. £73.86 divided by 31. That's £2.38 a day. Could you get a coffee anywhere for £2.38 a day?
Non, je crois pas.
Je crois pas non plus. Certainly not in most coffee shops that I know. So yeah, it's a really good offer, and that allows you to benefit from all of the activities and all of the feedback and all of the questions that you can ask in the masterclass. And our wonderful team is also providing the euro price, so it's €88 on a monthly basis if you are interested in euros. Again, the payments would be made in US dollars, mainly because the way our website works, we have to have payments in one price for this course, and or one currency for this course, but it allows it means that everybody's paying on the same basis, and that, I think, Anne is asking the question about why are the prices in dollars and not in pounds. They are. You can buy from anywhere. As I say, we have, for this course we have to have the prices in just one price for technical reasons ultimately. Okay.
I've got a question from Rich about how it's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, are the lessons or live need to be done at a certain time, or can they be done at any time during the week?
Great question, Rich. They can be done whenever it suits you. So they are released at that particular time. So if we're talking about the lesson on tomorrow, the 1st of October, that lesson will be released for you at kind of midnight tonight, ready for you to work on that tomorrow whenever it suits you. Equally, if you're busy tomorrow, you can do it the next day. Or you can do part of the lesson tomorrow. You can do 15 minutes of listening on the way to work or while you're walking the dog. And then a little later on tomorrow or on the day after tomorrow, on Wednesday, you could do the written aspects of it where you're adding your homework to the discussions and looking for your feedback and so on. So lots of opportunities, lots of possibilities, but you do that on your kind of time basis, as it were.
I've got another question from Val.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a chance for speaking practice?
Good question. So for the first time in this masterclass, we're actually introducing this as an optional extra. So there are 3 speaking classes per module, and these will happen either at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Oh, I'll need to double check this on which day it is. Let me see. So I'll just go here. So for French, the speaking classes are either at 4 p.m. on Tuesdays, not every Tuesday, 3 Tuesdays of the month, and that's UK time, so that's 11 a.m. New York or 8 a.m. Los Angeles, or Wednesday 10 a.m. UK, which would be 5 p.m. in Perth and 8 p.m. in Melbourne. Roughly, because there are some times when the clocks change for winter and so on, and those times will slightly change at that point. But these are a great opportunity to put into practice what you've learned in a small group speaking with a tutor, and that happens all the way throughout the masterclass. So that's an optional extra you can add at the time of purchase.
Okay, and can you just do the speaking classes on their own?
No, so these speaking classes are linked to the masterclass. So we'll be talking about what happens in the masterclass, using the activities of the masterclass to build on. So these are strictly linked to the masterclass, and therefore they're not available to purchase on their own. Okay, so from here, what do we need to do? Well, we need to make sure that you've got all the information that you need for the masterclass. And as I say, if you go to this link here, coffeebreakmasterclass.com, you'll be able to click on the French button there and find the Coffee Break Masterclass for October 2024 in French, and follow all the information in there. There's also, as I said, interviews with previous students. There are more details about the individual lessons and modules. Just all the information that you need on there, how the whole thing works, how to access everything, pricing details, and also a little countdown to remind you that it's about to start. It's getting started tomorrow, and we're going to be closing the doors on Friday of this week, or beforehand if our class fills up before then. So do keep that in mind, and that means that you'll be able to be part of our Coffee Break class of October 2024 if you decide to do so.
To graduate in
March 2025, which seems like a long way away at the moment, but it'll be here before we know it, I think.
Yes, it goes so fast.
Bon, merci beaucoup Hélène.
Merci Marc.
Et merci à vous d'être venu, d'être passé, d'avoir regardé. Et à une prochaine fois.
À la prochaine.
One final thing, and that is we hope that regardless of all the information about the masterclass today, we hope that you've learned something, and we hope that you've taken forward your knowledge of French about the indirect object pronouns. That is the key thing here, because we always want to help you move forward or review something you already know. For now, merci beaucoup et à la prochaine. Salut!
À bientôt dans la masterclass.
C'est-à-dire.